Over the weekend, Trump worked overtime from the White House while the Democrats, the Democrats who are looking after you, the folks, well, they got their paychecks, then hopped aboard a private jet and went to a retreat in Puerto Rico with lobbyists and corporate executives to go see Hamilton, with the woke Lin-Manuel Miranda. And then they went partying all weekend. I mean, really, you can't make that up. The optics are so horrible. Now, there you can see, there's Bob Menendez partying on the beach, Puerto Rico, baby. Because, when you're authentic, you have to pronounce it that way. It's a government shutdown, partying on the beach. Anyway, I, of course, didn't go to the beach. I stayed at home in a blizzard here in Washington and watched dumb people say stuff on TV.
I don't expect the president to capitulate. I do expect him to compromise. We're clearly not going to build a border wall funded by Mexico,
forgive me,
but we should negotiate.
Negotiate. Yeah, okay. That was Democratic Senator Chris Coons from Delaware. How are you supposed to negotiate when a good chunk of your caucus is on the beach? First of all, that's first of all. And second of all, the president has tried to negotiate, and you guys are unwilling to put any money toward the border wall. You guys don't want negotiation. Because remember, the initial request from Republicans was $25 billion. Republicans, they were willing to go down to $5.7 billion, which is on the table now. But here's all that Nancy Pelosi is willing to accept as a deal.
Is there any situation in which you would accept even $1 of wall funding for this president in order to reopen the government?
$1? $1. $1? Yeah, $1.
Well, aren't you a riot, Nance? I mean, they think this is funny. They're laughing. No one's getting paid, but don't worry, we'll blame that one on the Republicans like we always do. People are getting killed. Well, let me just file my nails like Anna Navarro. The opioid crisis, it worsens by the day. And for the first time, get this, Americans are more likely to die of an overdose than in a car accident. I mean, that's astounding. 50% more overdoses in 17 than there were in 16. Families, they're losing their kids. Gang violence is ripping cities apart. But we won't reopen the government unless the president is willing to bargain down to $1 for the border wall, because it's hilarious. They think this is funny. Are these really serious legislators? Because I'll tell you, it's getting really old watching these clowns in our government try to laugh it away. And then you turn on cable news and they pretend to be experts as well. They don't have a clue what they're talking about. The myths and the lies that you are hearing about this are astounding. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a big step back from all of their feigned outrage and phony lies and actually talk to a guy who knows what he's talking about. Because quite honestly, I'm sick of these talking heads. So here on today's show, we have a guy who is, believe it or not, an ex-Obama official. He's the head of Border Patrol, in fact, under Obama, who says he agrees 100% with what the president is trying to do with border security. Unequivocally. Because, guys, it's not a political game, and it's not supposed to be. This guy has been there. He's talked to the guys on the ground, and he will break down all of the phony myths the Dems are all of a sudden spewing now that they have apparently experienced memory loss, amnesia, and forgot about all the support they used to have for a border barrier before Trump took office. So Mark Morgan is with me now. He led the U.S. Border Patrol under Barack Obama, but yet he's in total agreement with President Trump's border wall. In fact, he says what the Democrats are now saying about the wall is not only wrong, it's insane. Mark, good to be here with you.
Thanks for having me.
So you were essentially canned by the Trump administration, but you say this is such an important issue that you have to leave politics aside. This is bigger than politics.
That's absolutely right. For a couple of years after I was removed by the current administration, I remained silent. But as time passed and I heard the rhetoric that was being put forth, and I wanted to believe it was really not based on political ideology, but as time went by, it absolutely has resonated with me that it is.
And you know the guys on the ground, you've talked to them, you know what's going on there. The experts all say this is in the right direction, these policies would absolutely work. So it has to be based on politics.
I think so too. And again, I urge the American people, don't listen to the pundits. Listen to the people that are actually doing this, have been doing this for risking their lives for their entire adult life. And also research. If you look back 2006, the Secure Fence Act, there's been just some dialogue lately talking about that. In 2006, a bipartisan bill was passed to create 720 miles of wall. What's changed? If you go back and do the research, you'll listen to the same people now, the same politicians now that are arguing against the wall, argued for the wall in 2006. What's changed?
I'll tell you what's changed is the president, because most people agreed with you. Many, in fact, have voted for border fences, as you said, in the past. And yet it appears now they're coming up with a bunch of poppycock that's not based on any evidence, such as walls all of a sudden are ineffective. Watch.
The president cannot hold public employees hostage because he wants to have a wall that is not effective.
We can secure our border without an ineffective, expensive wall.
Any wall would cost billions of dollars and have very limited effectiveness.
I mean, you know, if she says it, it's true.
Exactly. What's just incredulous to me, and this is the part that I really get frustrated, if you look at what they're saying now and look at what they were saying back in 2006 when they supported the wall, it's completely opposite of what they said then and what they said now. Anybody who tells American people that the wall is not effective, they are misleading and lying to the American people.
And you have a tagline about the effectiveness of the wall. What is it?
I do. So here's another disingenuous argument that they talk about. They talk about, hey, let's get more immigration law judges. Let's continue to get Mexico to get more skin in the game. Let's look at the visa overstays. All that is right. My tagline is, let's do it all, including the wall. They want to take a look at all this stuff except the wall. For example, they want to say, well, why can't we just increase technology? Why can't we just get more resources? My answer to that is yes and yes. Part of the Border Patrol's multi-layered approach since day one has been a kind of a three-tiered multi-layered approach: infrastructure, technology, and personnel. The wall is needed. It's an integral part of the overall strategy.
And how important is the federal government working with the state government, working with the local government? And how does that all play a role in actually getting effective border policy?
So this is a great question, and that's key. Like anything else, I've been in federal government for 30 years. There's not a single case and not a single incident that I ever participated where we did it alone as an agency. This crisis along the southwest border, and it is undoubtedly a crisis.
They're saying it's not, so I don't know.
Exactly. And again, I'll go back to what you intimated too. Go back to the experts. If you talk to the experts, every single person that's been on the border, lived on the border, and worked the border and worked this issue will tell you it's a crisis. And that crisis is definitely an interagency event. If you go to and look at the recent article by the Yuma sheriff, he talks about it. He talks about in 2005 when that multi-layered approach of infrastructure, technology, and personnel came. Guess what happened? Illegal immigration reduced by over 90%. Overall crime in his area drastically reduced. And why? Because the wall works.
And everyone used to agree it's a crisis. You hear we played it. People on CNN saying this is a crisis. People, Democrats saying it's a crisis. Republicans saying it's a crisis. All of a sudden now that Trump is calling it a crisis, all of a sudden it's a manufactured crisis. I want to talk about the fact that they're now shifting the narrative because they don't want to talk about the wall. And so now they're saying it's about people overstaying their visas.
So I think that's ironic. Just like a certain reporter was standing on the U.S. side of the wall saying how tranquil it was.
And we'll show that in a second.
Right. So my thought on that is they're actually making the case for us that illegal immigration, that immigration as a whole, is a significant issue. It's not just at the borders, it's visa overstays. But here's what I would say to the American people. If you invite somebody over to your house to stay a couple weeks, and they stay a few days longer than you anticipated, but then at 2 in the morning, someone breaks into your house in your basement window, where's your priority going to be, right? The people that you know, that you invited and you vetted, or the person that broke into your house. So what I say, with our limited resources that we have, let's focus on the southwest border.
Speaking of Jim Acosta, he's a real gem. He went to the border and he went next to the wall and he said, look, there's no crisis here. No one's coming in. Watch.
A lot of the residents we talk to say this is a very safe community and that they don't see migrants coming into their community causing a lot of crime and mayhem. We're not seeing any kind of imminent danger. There are no migrants trying to rush toward this fence.
I mean, it's the stupidest thing in the worord. Any fourth grader would understand the only reason that you're not seeing a big problem there is because you're standing in front of a giant frickin' wall.
That's right. And what I would say is, before I became chief of Border Patrol, I did 2 decades in the FBI. I actually led the El Paso office. And every morning when I would have my coffee or tea, I would look out and I could see Juarez. And every single day we were working with the DEA, we worked with all components of the DHS. We work in human trafficking cases. We work in drug cases. We were targeting the cartels, illegal immigration every single day. day. So I would say to reporters like him and others, go down to the wall, live it, talk to the people who have lived this and worked this, trying to protect American people. Anybody that says this is not a crisis is absolutely misleading the American people.
And I would say if he spent a week down there, maybe camp out in a tent where there's not a secure fence or a border or a border wall, and see how that goes for him. I don't think it would go as swimmingly as him standing in front of a wall for 5 minutes.
Absolutely.
Saying there's no crisis.
That's right. Go to McAllen at 2 in the morning, where there's no wall, no personnel, and no and no surveillance whatsoever, and see what he thinks.
Speaking of the drugs, another thing I love to hear is that they say that the wall would do nothing to fix the drug crisis because the drugs are coming through port of entries, not through holes in the border security.
The majority of the drugs he was talking about come through legal ports of entry.
The overwhelming majority of illegal drugs come into this country through ports of entry.
The vast majority of drugs are coming through the ports of entry.
So the way I look at it, I must be missing something, Mark, because when I see that, I say, okay, the drugs that they caught are coming through the ports of entry, but it's the ones that they didn't catch that are going and killing people, and that's what the problem is. Am I missing something?
No, you're not. And again, that's another reason why I've broken my silence. That is a complete false narrative, really on two fronts. First of all, what it shows when they're talking about the drugs coming south of the border, it illustrates again that there's a significant issue on the southwest border. And then they want to really change the narrative, saying it's points of entry. You're absolutely right. The issue is in between the points of entry. First, let me tell you, this is fact. This is not hyperbole. In between the points of entry, they are still interdicting large quantity of drugs. Fact. The other part that's not being told is, like you said, we don't know what's getting through in between the points of entry. And so because they want to say they're all coming through the points of entry, therefore it's not an issue, we don't need to do anything, that's the part that's insane.
And it's just so nonsensical because all these people are going on TV, they're repeating these same talking points without even thinking, okay, again, would a fourth grader, if they were to look at this, they would understand that that argument makes absolutely no sense.
And too, again, if you go back and look at the facts, look at San Diego, look at Nogales, look at El Paso, look at McAllen, the 30% that does have that multi-layer approach of a wall, infrastructure, technology, and personnel, it's worked, and you've seen a drastic reduction in all things, drug trafficking, human trafficking, illegal trafficking, immigration. You've seen it. It works where there's a wall, it works. But we only have a wall on 30% of the southwest border.
So what are some of the other things? Your tagline, do it all, including the wall. I mean, in terms of interior checkpoints, is that something that would help?
Absolutely. That's a great point. And you know exactly what you're talking about here is that, so if we do that multi-layer approach of infrastructure, technology, and personnel, i.e. building that wall, what that does is then it funnels, it takes that avenue away, and it funnels everybody to the points of entry. But even the points of entry are still not 100%. And what that will allow, the strategy for the United States Border Patrol is to take those personnel and other resources, because we've taken that avenue away by having a wall. And then as part of the overall strategy, we can have interior checkpoints. They have jurisdiction up to 100 miles within the United States from the border. And those interior checkpoints then will serve, right, as kind of a multi-layered, multi-dimensional approach to then anything that does get through the points of entry, we got another shot at it.
Now, the only thing I will ask is, how do you stop those interior points of entry? You talk to some people in Arivaca, Arizona, for instance, and there's American citizens saying, we're the ones getting stopped and not enough people that are here illegally getting stopped. How do you make sure that it's the people who are not supposed to be here that are being, caught by the ports of entry rather than, American citizens going to pick their kids up from school?
So that's a great point. And if you look at the intelligence community, they don't just set these checkpoints up willy-nilly, right? It's based on hardcore historical data and intelligence that says where are the drug routes, where are the human trafficking routes. We know it. So the checkpoints will be done systematically based on really solid intelligence of where those checkpoints need to be. Because if American people think that the stuff that's going on southwest border isn't affecting their cities, it is. The cartels take it through southwest, including in between the points of entry, and those drugs are entering every major metropolitan city in this country.
Thank you, Mark. Mark Morgan, everyone. I want everyone to know, we asked him, as we do everyone, is there anything you want to promote? Is, a book, a Twitter? And he said no. He's only doing this because it is the right thing. And for that, we thank him for coming on. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Constitution bashing is all the rage on the left these days. Actually, not these days. It's always been. But now we've got actual socialist running around the halls of the Congress. We got little Alejandria Ocasio-Cortez, who wants to blow up the whole system. But first you should probably learn how it works, how our system works, right, Alejandria? And then we've got Rashida, impeach the MFer, Tlaib, I don't know, her whole name is like a giant typo. She says, quote, yes, I am a Muslim and Palestinian, get over it. Palestinian? Oh wait, I thought you were an American, because isn't that why you work for the American government? Maybe not. No doubt this anti-American strain runs deep among liberals. And this week we saw evidence of that from none other than potential 2020 presidential candidate and Democratic wunderkind Beto O'Rourke. And remember, the softer you say the T, the better he likes it.
The solution is not walls. It's not more partisanship and rhetoric. It's understanding what our values are.
Did you hear that? He's even making the poor babies cry. Well, what are those values, Beto? Well, for him, they aren't the Constitution of the United States, that's for sure. In fact, in a recent interview, he told a reporter he's not sure the principles we were founded on still work. I mean, guys, do we really need to be electing another president who hates our Constitution to the government again? Because remember how swimmingly that went last time we tried it. The country is quite honestly still trying to recover from that wreck. Oh, here he is, just getting his teeth cleaned. He's just like you guys. He goes to the dentist. I mean, yeah, the kind of healthcare he favors makes routine cleanings like that nearly unaffordable for a lot of average Americans, but he's trying to be just like you, and that's the point. That's the important part. And just a quick diversion. This is all your fault, Alejandria Ocasio-Cortez. Well done. Now all of a sudden, these old stinkers in Congress think they can just go hop on the gram and be all hip and chill and be all lit.
Hey, it's Kamala Harris, and this is my Mood Mix, a song that has always made me dance. Check the rhyme, A Tribe Called Quest. You know I'm talking about Fife.
Ooh, give me some more of where that came from, you funky sister. Someone should really honestly tell her a mood mix? That's not a thing, Kamala. Okay, now back to Beto. Sorry for the diversion. He had a disastrous interview with the Washington Post, and I really mean a disaster.
Beto O'Rourke being criticized, even mocked in some cases, over a recent interview. The Texas Democrat and potential 2020 presidential candidate repeatedly said he didn't know how to solve major issues.
Jenna Johnson, the one who wrote that Washington Post article, wrote on Twitter, and I quote, when it comes to immigration policy and changing the way things are, he has few solutions and would rather debate and discuss the topic. And so that's why you're not hearing much about it in the media, because they want him to win if he runs. They plan to be in the can for him. So CNN, we looked, they didn't mention this interview once, and neither did MSNBC. And the reason is because it was widely panned across the board. It was a terrible interview. When asked what should be done to address visa overstays, want to know what he said? Beto simply said, I don't know. Oh, you don't know? Okay, I mean, that's a perfectly acceptable solution for someone who we pay to solve these things to have, right? I mean, I'm assuming he just knows orange man bad. And quite honestly, that's probably good enough for his base. When asked whether he agrees with Trump's plan to withdraw troops from Syria, he said that he would like to see, quote, a debate, a discussion, a national conversation about why we're there. None of these, by the way, are actual solutions. Why we're there, why we fight, why we sacrifice the lives of American service members, why we're willing to take the lives of others where we're involved. Dude, we've been having that conversation for years. That's been the conversation of the past decade. While you're sitting around philosophizing, American soldiers are dying overseas. As a politician, it is your job to decide what needs to be done and to come up with the solutions. We've had the conversation. We're done having the conversation. The American people want answers. But he's admitted he doesn't really know a whole lot, and he has instead decided to focus his energy on the border. But interestingly, quote, O'Rourke played a negligible role in shaping immigration policy during his 6 years in Congress. I mean, it's true when you think about it, right? I mean, had you heard of this guy like a couple months ago? Because I hadn't. And I thought he was honestly Mexican when I heard his name, but then I found out he's only a white Irish dude pretending to be Mexican. Then the media decided to back him in his run against Ted Cruz, and still we knew nothing about the guy other than this. He likes to ride out into his venues on a skateboard like a cool dude, and that he was in a band. Oh, and then we also know that he drives a truck. And, he's probably like, oh, but do I have to? It's so dirty and pollutive, and I can't imagine Mother Nature would approve of this. And they're like, dude, if you drive out in your dinky little smart car, no one in Texas will respect you. And so then he was probably like, okay, well, it has to be an environmentally friendly truck, like the Ford F-150, which, by the way, I don't know if you know this, guys, but that is the most environmentally friendly truck that you can buy. Sorry to all you F-150 owners out there. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying. Oh, and speaking of driving.
The Houston Chronicle obtained the police report from O'Rourke's 1998 DWI arrest. A witness told police O'Rourke was speeding when he lost control moments later and struck a truck traveling in the same direction. The witness also said O'Rourke then attempted to leave the scene, but the witness turned on headlights to get the defendant to stop.
Oopsie. Now, you would think that attempting to flee from the scene after causing an accident while drinking and driving would be the most disturbing thing about Beto. But it's not. He wants to be president, yet he does not believe in the country as it was founded. And he said, and I quote, can an empire like ours, an empire? Listen, we're not an empire. Can an empire like ours still be managed by the same principles that were set down 230 plus years ago? And the answer to that question is hell yes, it can. Our Constitution doesn't go out of date, sir. Sure, we can amend it, fine. But what our founders understood about humans, about people, is that human nature does not change. In the same way that human desire for peace, for freedom, and for prosperity does not change. Our founders didn't write the Constitution for 1787. They didn't make our government to only serve a certain age. Our founders built a framework of government that met the demands of human nature, and that will forever be immutable. One of the defining qualities progressives like Beto is that they don't believe in that. They don't believe in the American experiment. They don't believe in the principles set forth in our Constitution and in our Bill of Rights. And their own words prove it. Remember, we had a similar guy not too long ago say similar things.
We cannot rely on a rule book written for a different century.
Now all we just need is for Beto's wife to come out and say she's never been proud of this country. Hate to break it to you, Obama, the Constitution is not for a different century. It's for this century. It was for the last century, and it will be for the next century to come. I mean, this was a guy who wanted to fundamentally change our country away from how our founders had envisioned it so that government could grab more power to fulfill his Marxist causes. Let me tell you, every increase of government power is done with the trusting of our dear leaders and their good causes. But that's not how this country is supposed to work. The founders warned against it, in fact, and Obama's presidency, if anything, shows that it will lead this country to disastrous consequences. Why do you think we are where we are now? We are, as a country, so divided, and it really shouldn't be that way. The economy is on fire, there are more jobs than ever, and therefore, there should really not be this grim haze smothering our national mood. But the reason we're divided is because we are recovering from so many of the demons that Obama's presidency sowed in our culture. This country thrives when we stick to how our founders envisioned this country. And I'll say this, we cannot underestimate little Beto. I know it's tempting because he's a joke and we all know it, but that doesn't mean the left will see him that way. And so we cannot stand idly by while the left tries to elect yet another president who wants to finish off the fundamental transformation of this country away from our Constitution that Obama started.